Hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you for joining us and welcome to New Hampshire Magazine's Summer Camp and Program Expo. I am Ernesto Burden. I am the publisher of New Hampshire Magazine and former summer camper myself. I was just telling our panelists what fond memories putting this program together has brought back for me about my own years of summer camp. It's going to be a great program today. We have 4 speakers from various camps who are going to let us in on all of the things that they're doing to make this a really special summer for their campers and a safe summer for their campers. And then after that panel discussion, we will be able to have individual table talks where you can go from table to table within our virtual event landscape here and check in with directors of individual camps and ask the really specific questions that I think our speakers are going to be encouraging you to ask. One of the things that I've taken away from my discussions with them already is how important this year it is for parents to really dig in to each individual camp's methodologies and understand that and make sure it's the perfect fit for your family and your kids. So it should be a great program. A few notes that you'll see that there are individual tables within this virtual event environment, and you just click on that table, and if there's room at it, you will be allowed in, and then turn on your camera and your microphone, and you can have a video conversation with that camp director. It's also worth noting there are 2 floors. You don't have to take an elevator. Just look over to the left-hand side of the screen, and you should see an icon that indicates the number of floors, and there'll be a bunch of different numbers, but only 1 and 2 will be available to click on, and that will move you between the different floors of the virtual event arena. As we're having this conversation, there will be questions that you can ask. Just type them into the Q&A field. You'll see on the right-hand side of your screen a chat, participants, and a Q&A box. Click on Q&A and type your questions in there, and you will be able to ask questions, and we'll try to get to all of the questions that you have during the presentation part of the program. And speaking of that, I have talked long enough for the moment anyway, and I would like to introduce our panelists. We have Garrett Colgan-Snyder, founder and director of Camp Hawkeye; Tiffany Jocelyn, director of arts and camping services and camp director at YMCA's Camp Sargent; Mary Jean M.J. Perry, executive director of the Fleur de Lis Camp; and Ken Robbins, director of Camp KBN. I had to double check my pronunciation there, Ken. Okay, and so the way that this discussion is going to work is we're going to bring these guys up one at a time and then bring them all up together at the end for a Q&A. So we're going to start with Ken, who's going to talk about COVID safety at camp this summer. So Ken, if you want to turn on your camera and join me.
Hey, well, thank you, Ernesto. Right, and good morning to everyone here. My name is Ken Robbins, and as Ernesto said, I'm the director at Camp Cabian, which is a residential nonprofit camp for boys in Alton Bay. I also have the privilege of serving right now as the president of the New Hampshire Camp Directors Association. The New Hampshire Camp Directors Association represents the 160 or so youth recreation camps, licensed youth recreation camps here in the state of New Hampshire. For the last year, a significant focus of the New Hampshire Camp Directors Association has been on trying to help camps in the state be open, be safe in the environment that we find ourselves in. Last year, the guidelines that came down from the state, similar to guidelines issued across all industries, were such that a very small percentage of camps were able to open. I think roughly half of the day camps in the state were able to open, but only a handful, 4 or 5 of the residential camps were open last summer. Our goal this summer is to see that all camps are open. And we've been working closely with the state, specifically with the Department of Health and Human Services, who licenses camps in the state, to to find new revisions and new guidelines that will facilitate all camps being open. That's going to include a lot of things that are not normal or weren't normal until more recently for camps. Things like COVID testing. Certainly for residential camps, testing is going to be a big part of that. We've been a big advocate recently for trying to ensure that summer camp staff have access to vaccinations before the summer starts, which will make camps just that much safer. We're very much in support of all of the various non-pharmaceutical interventions that we know make not just camps, but activities everywhere more safe. Things like hand washing, mask wearing, distancing. We will see differences in what camps look like this summer. And I think some of the other panelists will talk more specifically about what that looks like. But the goal really this summer is to see that what modifications that camps make, what adaptations they make to their programs are such that camp can be camp, and we can get all of these children who might have missed out on camp last summer, who've had what we know is just a tremendously difficult year, get them back to camp, get them back to some semblance of normal. So I think camps will still see things like singing, like large group games of capture the flag and soccer and ultimate frisbee, all of the activities that go along with camp. Our objective at the New Hampshire Camp Directors Association is to ensure that we have guidelines, we have guidance that ensures that that's safe, that it's healthy, and that it's fun. And again, our primary objective is to ensure that all camps are open, and so that all kids, not just here in New Hampshire, but across the country, have the opportunity to get back to camp this summer.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Ken. One quick follow-up question. We'll do a full Q&A at the end, but just a quick follow-up question about, you had mentioned COVID testing. Are some camps also doing sort of quarantining protocols ahead of time for say, an overnight camp or things like that, where I won't expand on it, just I see you're nodding. So
yeah, I'm nodding. So the state guidance, which we expect will be issued sometime soon, will talk specifically about the expectations of what camps have to do and what camps ought to do. But it's going to be different for every camp. Every camp is really different. And I think that's an important thing to note, is that every camp's program is a little bit different. Every camp's infrastructure is a little bit different. Every camp's resources are a little bit different. And so how they hew to those guidelines will look a little bit different. I think it's safe to assume, based on my understanding, my reading of the guidelines, both last year's and what the drafts we've seen of this year's, is that most camps are going to be asking participants to, if not quarantine, then minimize the contacts they have outside of their home for a period of time, 10 days, maybe a couple of weeks before coming to camp. It's not as, I don't believe it's as strict as a shelter in place, if you will. It's just, not going to birthday parties, that kind of thing, before coming to camp.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And we'll see you back here for the group Q&A. And anybody else who has questions, don't forget you can add them into the Q&A section, and we'll get to those at the end. And now we're going to bring up MJ to talk about why kids need camp this year more than ever. Welcome, MJ.
Hi, thank you, Ernesto. I am really pleased to be here with you all today. I'm MJ Perry, the Executive Director of Fleur de Lis Camp in Fitzwilliam, New Hampshire. We are a not-for-profit girls' camp, overnight girls' camp. I'm also a member of the New Hampshire Camp Board of Directors that Ken mentioned. When I think about camp, one of the most wonderful things my parents ever did for me was to send me to camp as a 10-year-old. And like countless others that have gone to camp, I know that camp has been one of the most important factors in shaping the person I am today. And after this year of incredible challenges, hardships, uncertainty, sadness, I know that camp is one of the greatest opportunities for children this summer to have. One of the things that's been missing this year is that truly connecting with other people. It's been in low supply, and technology has really helped us to have some level of connection. But it's not the same as that real FaceTime you get at camp. we've missed the experience of talking with someone face to face, having the opportunity to really look into their eyes and hear those subtle nuances of their voice and understand the deeper meaning in their words from their gestures and their posture. And this just can't be achieved over a screen. And actually spending time physically together, whether it's talking and laughing and playing, learning, having adventures, it allows for this really magical organic development of friendships that's been missing over the past year. One of the interesting parts of my job is hiring staff, and I've been talking to many first-year college students that have done this year remotely. And while they have adapted to the schoolwork being online or sort of coming to grips with the disappointment of not having a typical college experience, they frequently mention that loss of being able to build friendships organically as one of their biggest challenges. Due to COVID, one thing that I know I've been missing and other adults have been missing, but certainly children have been missing, is the opportunity to be part of a rich community experience. And camp is all about community. It's about being together, spending time together, having shared interests, finding out new things from each other, having similar goals. It's a place to practice that give and take of being part of a group. It's figuring out problems together, and it's the joy of belonging to something bigger than yourself. And this has been something that's been really hard to be a part of during this past year. Several parents I've talked to in the past months have talked about their concerns that their children have had few opportunities to build their confidence and develop their independence due to not being able to really be outside of their home bubble. And camp is a place where kids try new things all the time. They take on challenges, they master skills, they build their confidence through all that. They take responsibility for little things like making sure they have their lunch bag or where they've left their toothbrush and cleaning up after themselves. But it's so critical to have kids have opportunities to build confidence, to build their independence, and camp can do all that. And of course, camp is about being outside, being fun, being active, being with great adults that aren't their family, aren't their teachers. Our counselors are amazing. It's about having so much fun and developing those great friendships and memories that last a lifetime. And I got to believe that one of the greatest gifts anyone can give a child today is sending them to camp, because they need it now more than ever. So I want to ask Tiffany to add in comments about day camp and why that piece is so critical for children.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, MJ. That was beautifully, beautifully said.
Yeah. So my name is Tiffany Jocelyn. I'm the director at Camp Sargent in Merrimack, New Hampshire. We are a day camp for both boys and girls from kindergarten all the way up to 10th grade. Many of the things are the same for day camp as they are for resident camp, for the importance of camp. We were fortunate enough to be able to be open last summer at half capacity. So we saw the impact that camp was making on kids that had been pretty much locked in their houses for almost 6 months, from March to the beginning of summer. Our kids were lacking that self-confidence. They were lacking the social skills that they developed with meeting friends and people at school. They were lacking in teamwork, right? They're home learning essentially by themselves via their computer screen. They're in a classroom, but they don't have that interaction that they needed to build those relationships and know what it means. By the end of the summer, we saw a tremendous impact that camp made on those kids. They were working as teams in their small cohorts. We gave them challenges that they needed to complete throughout their summer. We made sure that they were building relationships and friendships throughout all summer long. And then we continued now until the winter to keep those relationships growing and building, because we knew how important those relationships would be coming back into this summer, because they're aren't having those social relationships being in school. So the social impact that camp gets on kids is tremendous. MJ said the confidence building, We saw some kids that were very hesitant getting out of their cars, being separated away from mom and dad. By week 2 of our summer camp program last year, that confidence was double, right? They were getting out of cars. They were excited to be at camp. It was like a party for them every single day, that we were giving them that interaction that they were so longing for that they weren't getting throughout their school year. So it's camp, I feel, is super important. And coming as a camp director who was not a camp kid at all, and never had been to camp prior to starting to work at Camp Sargent, and camp as an adult has even made that impact on me. So it's super important. And like I said, it's mostly building those relationships, building those friendships, creating memories together that are going to last for the rest of their lives.
It's really exciting and really beautiful. It's funny that the things that both you and MJ described, that sort of confidence and independence that comes with camp, they almost seem like, and they seem like one side of the coin, and the other side of the coin is the community that you describe. And so that ability to both grow somebody's independent skills and their ability to work together with other people at the same time is really special.
And the same thing goes for our counselors. We're providing them with opportunities to build friendships with other counselors or other camp staff, their kiddos that they have in their group. And it's allowing them to be a role model for those kids and letting them grow in their leadership skills as well.
Yeah. I'll save this for the Q&A, but that brings up another interesting question about counselors and junior counselors and how people get into that pipeline. Okay, great. Well, thank you, Tiffany. And now I think we're going to have Garrett join us and talk about how camp will be different this year and what to expect some of those differences to be. Hey, Garrett.
Hi, thanks, Ernesto. My name's Garrett, and I'm the founder, owner, and director of Camp Hawkeye, an overnight camp for all humans in Charlestown, New Hampshire. I want to add one more thing to sort of why we need camp more than ever, and it's from the perspective of a parent. I have 2 sons, and yes, kids need camp. You know who else needs camp? I need camp. I need my kids to go to camp and have some time outside of the house. I think one of the things that we forget for ourselves as parents, and most of the people that are watching this, our parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles, we need the break. We love our kids. I love my sons, and I love them more when they go to school consistently, they have friends that they spend time with, and they go to camp and they're outside of the house. It's been so difficult for parents, and we're going on 13 months now. That we need to recognize how important it is for parents to have some time away from the kids, and for as MJ and Tiffany said, for the kids to have a learning experience outside of their own house, a consistent, structured, social learning experience outside of the house. And the fact that it's outside with some great people is even better. And as a parent, it's for me as much as anybody else. So I know I wasn't supposed to talk about that part, and we can bring it up again later, but that parent perspective and being a parent and knowing how important it is to have a break from our wonderful children is something that we should certainly remember. I'm going to talk a little bit about how things are different this year. And for parents, so what you should expect in the pre-camp process, the registration process, and then what it's going to look like at camp. Ken mentioned it a little bit in the beginning when he talked about COVID regulations and guidelines and how that's going to be make things a little bit different. But also the economic realities in the United States make camp different. Okay? So when you're choosing a camp and during this registration process, parents, first thing, there are fewer options. It's been a difficult time for every industry, and camps haven't escaped that. Most camps, as Ken mentioned, half of day camps and almost all overnight camps in New Hampshire didn't open last summer. It means 18 months without revenue. There have been a couple of camps that have closed here in New Hampshire, but around New England. And we know that kids in New Hampshire and around New England go to camps in all 6 New England states. So there are fewer options. There are also some camps in New Hampshire that haven't made the commitment to open yet this summer. Most camps have, and most camps are very clear about what they're offering. It is March 6th after all. But there are a few camps that are still trying to figure out whether they can absorb the costs of testing, whether they can logistically manage the expectations of keeping the kids COVID safe at camp, and whether they can get staff that are going to be able to commit to being at camp or to commute to camp for day camp. So there are fewer options, which means if you find a camp that you like, move on it. In years past, you'd be able to go to a camp fair, you do some research, you spend a couple of weeks going out, but it's like buying a house in a hot market right now. If you find a house, if you find a camp that you like, if you connect with the camp director in the program, you should move with registering for that camp so that you don't miss out on that spot, because there are fewer slots. And on the other side, there are more parents competing for slots for their kids this year. The longer we have kids trapped in our houses with us, the more we need and want to get them out. And one way that's going to happen as vaccine rollout continues and as things start to open up is at camp. Hopefully we can get kids back to school at a higher level and more consistently. And camp's another way to do that. Kids need to be out of the house and parents need to be able to do their work and make up for some of the time lost and income lost. So there are more parents that normally wouldn't be in the camp search game that are in it now. So there are fewer slots and competition is higher. So if you find a camp, move with that. Testing fees. There may be some additional fees this year as you're looking at camp registration. Remember, it might not just be tuition costs this year. There may be some testing fees that go along with that for certain types of programs. Some camps are absorbing those. Camps are continuing to try to figure out ways that testing can be done if necessary and if part of their safe reopening plan can be done more cheaply or with third-party services that offer them for free. We're working on that, but there may be some additional fees for that, so keep that in mind. And finally, camps understand that it's not only been tough economically for us, it's been tough for parents. So most camps have opened up additional financial aid. So if you think that you can't afford this camp or 4 weeks of camp, you can only do 2 weeks of camp, or you can't afford 6 or you can't 8 weeks of camp, we recognize everybody, you need care for your children. They need to be in a safe place and you need to be able to go to work or do your work from home. Ask. Camps recognize it's been difficult for everybody. There is additional financial aid out there. So please ask for what you need. Second, in the pre-camp process, a normal part of that process might be a home visit where a representative from the camp comes and sits with you, or a tour or a visit to the camp. Those are happening only virtually now. You can still get a home visit with a camp director, virtually speaking, over a video chat like this or some other platform. And tours can happen virtually. There's a lot of camps that have put up tours on their website. You can see a lot of pictures and whatnot. Most camps are not doing on-site tours. Some might be, but remember, there's going to be expectations for masking up and distancing when you're there. In the pre-camp process, you can expect that a lot of camps are going to ask for a test right before your child arrives at camp. So for overnight camps, it'll be 3 to 7 days ahead of arrival at camp. You're going to be asked to get a test. So just keep that in mind as you're planning for the summer. As Ken mentioned, there might be some quarantine expectations, mask wearing, social distancing in the 10 days in advance of the start of your child's session. For day camp, these are different, and the challenges of day camp and the coming in and out every day are increasingly difficult during COVID times, but I know that Tiffany and other day camp directors are really handling those very, very well. And finally, in the pre-camp process, arrival is going to be different. Normally coming to camp, there's this 360-degree all-inclusive experience. It's happy, hugging and welcoming and going and meeting the counselors and going around camp and being involved and at an overnight camp, maybe setting up your kid's spot in the cabin. It's not going to be that way this year. I think a lot of camps are going to a one parent, one kid, or one adult, one guardian, and one kid model, where the guardian and parent might be asked to stay in the car. So during arrival, you wouldn't get out of the car. You would say goodbye. The kid would have their test. You'd give over the rest of the paperwork, and then the trunk would be popped. The trunk would be taken out, closed, say goodbye, and transition into the program. So this will look a little different than normal. You can still get FaceTime with the directors or with the other administration, but it's going to look a little different. And then finally, at camp, again, Ken mentioned some of it, but we can expect smaller groups. We can expect the new normal to be wearing a mask, and then altered activities. We're still going to have some of these big activities, but they might be changed in the way that they're delivered or the timing during the session. For example, in our program, we usually have assigned intercabin seats for lunch. to foment relationships across cabin groups and across gender and age groups. We're not going to do that for the first 10 days of the session, because our kids will be in their cabin cohorts without their masks on. They're going to be eating and sleeping, and that's the time they're not going to have their mask on. They're not going to have their masks. They're not going to be without their masks mixing with another cabin. So those tables for meals are going to be all with their cabin, as an example. After 10 days, those things will open up. So Capture the Flag, our most popular activity at camp, will be as normal on Thursday, week 2. But it will be adjusted in the first week to manage some of the COVID guidelines and necessities. Finally, for an overnight camp, you expect daily temperature taking and symptom monitoring, which was not typical at camp. There are always nurses, and they're managing the kids' health along with the cabin counselors, but it will be a regular part of the process, just like dropping a younger kid off at a lot of preschools or daycare programs, where they might take the kid's temperature before they go into school and ask you to fill out a couple of questions. It'll be the same thing, the cabin counselor with the group and the nurse getting a sort of like a quick snapshot of how they're feeling for that day. So registering for camp, pre-camp and at camp, they're all going to look a little different. We're still going to get to that same place where the kid is going to have that, hopefully, transformative social experience that allows you to get a break from your wonderful kids for a little while.
Well, that sounds not incredibly daunting in terms of the option of not being at camp. Awesome. All right, thank you. Let's bring everybody in and see if we've got some questions for the Q&A.
Ernesto, we didn't get Tiffany to comment more about how day camp might look different. I don't know if we could give her just a little bit.
Let's start with that. Tiffany.
Okay, thank you, Karen. So just to reiterate from the points that Karen just made, you find a camp that you like and you love for your child, move on it. We are seeing, as a day camp, we are seeing our registrations are skyrocketed from where they were at this time last year, because more and more parents are trying to get their kids to camp and get them that experience that they hadn't gotten throughout their school year. They want them out of the house. They want them to have a good summer and have some fun with their friends. So if you see a camp you love, make sure you're moving on it, because like Karen said, space is limited. We have to follow all of our safety guidelines with COVID stuff. So make sure that you are signing your kids up early. A lot of the same thing goes back and forth with day camp and resident camps. We are going to follow all of the guidelines that were given for COVID. Drop off and pick up and drop off are going to look a little different, where it's going to be a drive-through kind of drop off. Parents will stay in their cars. We'll get the kids out, do a quick questionnaire of COVID symptoms, if you've traveled, take a temperature check at the beginning of their camp day. So just following all of those guidelines that were given and making sure that our campers and staff are safe. That's our number one priority going into the summer. With that said, not to jeopardize, our big goal is not to jeopardize the experience. We want to provide a fun, engaging atmosphere for kids to come and learn and be kids, right? Still running the same activities, just with a different spin. So like an example, swimming. We might have the different cohorts down at Waterfront swimming in different quadrants of our swimming area. They might not all be in one giant pool together, you know what I mean? Running different group activities with smaller group sizes. We'll still do our morning meeting. They'll just look a little different, with spread out more throughout camp, keeping our group sizes down. Open houses and tours, they look a little different. Normally we have a giant open house where you can come and tour camp. We might be doing either those virtually this year or on appointment basis, so that we're limiting the number of people that we have there at one time. Making sure like our quarantine rules are still going to follow. If you have traveled out of the state or out of New England, you'll have to quarantine before coming to day camp, just to make sure that we're keeping everyone safe. And with the going in and out every day, it's a little bit more tricky than it is resident camp, because once they're there and they're in their little bubbles. Day camp, they're leaving every day, going home and going to do different activities with their families. So I think that those are the biggest differences. I think Garrett covered a bunch that kind of co-mingle and kind of are the same for resident camp and day camp. So, yeah.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Tiffany. And so everyone, we have some questions here from the audience. first question that had come in was regarding Ken mentioning that there would be an effort to get camp staff vaccinated. And the question is, would this apply only to camp staff that are New Hampshire residents, or what are you thinking in terms of the possibilities of vaccination?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's a little bit unanswerable. So the governor announced just yesterday, I think, that phase 2A vaccinations, I think registration for appointments will start on March 17th, for appointments beginning on March 22nd. It was about 3 weeks ago that youth recreation camps were specifically named as part of phase 2A. This is great news for us. It doesn't specify that applies to camp staff that we might hire from outside of New Hampshire. We certainly do. Most camps, certainly most residential camps, are hiring from outside the state, and a lot of day camps, certainly those that are near borders, are doing the same. The CDC identified camp staff as essential, but it's still up to each individual state to determine the order of priority and a schedule. So I think it's going to be up to each individual camp to sort of push that and figure out how it's going to work. I don't have a clear answer. I think we might have clear answers coming in the next week or so as we talk with DHHS. This is all happening quickly, and certainly as we at New Hampshire camps find out more about how you can prove that you are eligible and whether you can do that from another state coming to New Hampshire or do it in your own state. As we know, we'll be sharing that information to our member camps.
Okay, one follow-up question, speaking of counselors and vaccinations, for families that might have older kids, older teens and things like that, how do you guys find counselors and junior counselors, and what's that look like?
How do we find our staff? I think a lot of camps home grow their staff. It's campers who have grown up going to the camp, who then matriculate through maybe a counselor and training program and then come back to work at the camp. I know at Cabian, for example, roughly I'd say 80% of our staff grew up with us. Outside of that, it's generally it's oftentimes friends of those staff that grew up with us. There are also there are programs for finding camp staff. A lot of camp staff use various organizations that recruit both nationally and internationally to create a more diverse staff profile.
And if I could add, Ernesto, I love having staff that are also new to camp, new to our camp, because it brings freshness, it brings new ideas, it brings new and different energy. So while we highly value our folks that have grown up in camp, having new people come into our community is excellent. And as I will say to pretty much everyone I interview, it is about the best job you could ever have, for all it gives to you and all you get from it. So, and all you give to others.
Can I jump in one more thing on this, Ernesto, if that's okay? In a normal year, camps across the United States hire, I think it's more than 100,000 international staff members on a J-1 visa program. This is not a normal year. We have all of these staff positions that normally in another year might be filled by international staff. And it's not that we don't have any international staff, it's just my experience and what I'm hearing from other directors, it's a much smaller percentage, and we're not sure what's going to happen, whether people are going to be able to come. So there are a lot of jobs that, normally speaking, might be spoken for already that are out there and ready. We would love to hire people who've never been at camp before, or some older teenagers. Some camp programs that allow older teenagers to participate as participants.
Yeah.
Transition into the leadership development program. Our leadership development programs are generally speaking, are a great mix of people that have grown up at camp and new people, and getting that training. Teenagers don't get that training in a lot of different places, right? Where are you going to get this professional training? You don't get it bagging groceries, right? Where do you get, 2 hours a week on, group development or leadership or, cooperation or whatever, communication? These are the things that we do at camp. Kids will go home from camp with a resume. Things that just aren't done in school, and they don't have these sort of like introductory professional opportunities other places. You get real responsibility at camp, and without these international, there are a lot of spots available. People should be encouraging their teenagers. I mean, what's the teenage unemployment rate in the United States? Over 50%. I mean, so go for it. We're hiring.
Well, that's inspiring news, as I can say as a parent of kids that range from 9 to 18. I think we have folks for you on both ends of the funnel. Cool. Let's see. We have a question, another question from the audience, wondering about programs at any of your camps for high-functioning ASD children. Who wants to grab that?
I can jump in. MJ, if you want to jump in on that, please go.
No, go ahead.
Okay, it looked like you. So there are a couple of specific programs in the state that offer different levels of staffing for campers with autism spectrum disorder. Camp Starfish is one of them. Camp Allen is another one. And they're open at various levels. Depending on campers' needs, there are programs that, inclusion programs in the state that will be able to meet the needs of campers with ASD. Camp Hawkeye is one of them. As an overnight camp, there are certain expectations about sort of like managing one's own needs with prompts and things like that. But many camps will identify that on their website, and it's a very normal question that we get repeatedly. Once or twice a week, we're getting this question through the live chat on our website or through direct messages through our website. So if there's a camp program that you like that doesn't necessarily talk about inclusion on the homepage, a quick message, somebody from the camp will get back to you right away, and they'll understand what you're asking and be able to answer your question right away.
Okay, and I think this is a related question. Somebody's asking if there's a DAY program for 39-year-old male, or maybe you guys know, maybe that's an inside joke.
I think they're looking for day camp for their
Oh,
is what I think they're looking for.
All right. Well, if that were the case, I wonder if there's one for 50-year-olds too. Tiffany, how did the YMCA day camp follow social distancing protocols last summer? Were staff getting COVID tested, and did any of you have an outbreak? And if not, what did you plan to do if you did?
Yeah. So for social distancing last summer, we were in our cohorts of 1 to 9 counselor to kids. They stayed pretty much separated from every other group on camp. We had their own rainy day locations where they were separated. They would use all of their own materials. So we did keep our campers as separated as possible within their group. Obviously, kids are kids. It's hard to keep them 6 feet apart at all times and all that stuff, but they were in their cohorts for most of the summer. We try to keep those cohorts the same from week to week. We did not have an outbreak of COVID last summer. We had one isolated case, which we worked very closely with our local health officials. They walked us through step by step. The CDC was awesome. They made all of our calls for us, and we immediately, obviously that person was not at camp, and those that needed to quarantine and kept that one case isolated. If we did have an outbreak at camp, we would follow the same guidelines. We would isolate the individual if they were at camp that day. We would do our contact tracing. We have multiple staff that have taken course through Johns Hopkins University on contact tracing. So we would follow those and again contact our local officials and follow their guidance, and whatever they ask us to do, we incorporate and follow those protocols.
Okay, awesome. And then a follow-up question to that, sort of to throw out to the group. That's very much your answer underscores that you guys have a season's worth of experience under your belt. doing this now, which I think is really important. And what are some of the other things that you think are the major lessons learned out of that season of experience that make you really confident about this year?
I'll say that, our camp was not open last summer, but those camps that were, not just here in the state of New Hampshire, but throughout the region, a number of camps in Maine, and camps really all over the country. There were camps that ran and ran very successfully. And they gave us the blueprint, if you will. And there's been a lot of work done to study and report on what did they do and what worked better. So we have a whole year's worth, not just of experience, but data, and a year's better understanding of the virus and how to mitigate it. And so I think for me, that's what gives me a lot of confidence going into this summer, is that we know a lot more work has been done to study it, and our understanding of how to implement a good testing program, good NPIs, non-pharmaceutical interventions, all those things. There's a body of evidence now that just wasn't there last summer. We were really flying blind.
And can I add something to that? I think one of the things that it's hard to understand about the camp industry is so much different than many other industries. We share so much information. So yeah. if there's a way to do something well, we share that from camp to camp. And it's my experience as a parent, I'm not even getting that from the two schools that my sons go to. The expectations and the protocols are so different between the Montessori preschool that my younger son goes to and the elementary school that my oldest son goes to. It's the daily drop-off procedures are different. The amount of time they can be there in person, the expectations for virtual participation, the holding them at home or sending them. And they're like a mile and a half apart. So it's something that the camp industry does so well and has really made our response to coronavirus so much different and allowed us to be so much more consistent in the safety protocols, is the amount of sharing that happens from camp to camp. And that can be spoken to just the participation here in this panel, but then the cross participation of the people on this panel in other states and with other regional and national organizations. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's very powerful, Ernesto. And I'm very proud to be part of an industry that does work so closely together with one another.
And with that, it's interesting. So we had gained this whole body of knowledge, as Ken mentioned, from last summer from the camps that did open successfully. But even now, like at least every other week, we're talking as a group of camp professionals about how are we going to do this? How are you going to do this? What's going to be your response in this area? And it's enormously helpful to all camps for us to do our best.
Awesome. A couple of last questions here, and then I think we'll jump into the individual discussions, which I know that people are excited about. One question is, does NH Camps have a coaching program or guidance for new day camp establishment from somebody who's looking to start one?
Not specifically, but as MJ said, we're doing more than ever before in terms of collaboration, working together. MJ actually is being humble. She's been hosting for the better part of a year this bi-weekly meeting of camps, and back in the spring that was even more frequent than that, and we had meetings for day camps and resident camps and different programs. We pared that down as we got further into the summer and fall to just a bi-weekly meeting, but we're planning on we'll be making that more specific as we get going. Any camp that is interested in membership in the New Hampshire Camp Directors Association, really the only requirement is that they be licensed. And if they are looking to create their camp and so aren't licensed yet, they should just reach out to us through our website, and we can certainly pair them up with an existing camp to give them some information and guidance.
Okay.
The other thing I'd add to that is that the American Camp Associations are accrediting body for camps, and the New England region runs a New Camp Directors workshop every year. In fact, usually a couple of them. Garrett and I are both on the faculty of it, and it's a great way to build awareness, understanding of all different areas of being a director. So it's something to check out. That's through the American Camp Association New England region.
Okay, awesome. All right, well, that just about brings us to the end. We have one last question. It looks like we can just give somebody a head start here who's looking to get to the right table. They asked, they're looking for a day camp for a 6-year-old in the Derry area. If you guys know off the top of your head and you want to shout it out, otherwise, if you run such a camp, you can put that into the chat, and anybody can see that in the chat as well. But
Camp is not far from there. We're about 15 to 20 minutes.
all right, well, that's a good place to start then, Tiffany. And otherwise, again, if you want to weigh in as a camp that meets that criteria, type that into the chat. Oh, and I see people already are. So there you go. For the questioner, go look in the chat. You've got all kinds of options already. And on that note, thank you guys so much. This was, I learned a lot, and I'm sure that the people who joined us did. Remember, everybody, click on a table to enter, and you can see the tables listed here. You click on the table, folks will be manning those tables until 11 a.m. There are 2 floors, remember that, over on the left-hand side of the screen. You'll be able to click on floor 2 or floor 1 to move back and forth between those floors. Tables can fill up. So if a table's full and there's not room for you to get into the chat, just wait a couple minutes and you'll be and wait for a chair to open and you'll be able to go. At the end of this, we'll be sending out not only the recording of this Q&A discussion, but also a ebook download, which will have lots of information about all the camps, as well as all kinds of information about camping this summer. So you're going to want to look for that ebook download. It's going to come to you by email. Finally, thanks again to our speakers, Garrett, Ken, MJ, and Tiffany. And thank you to NH Camps and to Garrett to for helping to pull all of this together. I'm Ernesto Burden, publisher of New Hampshire Magazine. Very proud to have been part of this. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ernesto.
Thank you.
Thank you.